October 16th, 1793. Paris didn't just wake up. It seemed it hadn't gone to sleep at all. The morning was raw. The fog from the Seine clung to faces like a dirty rag. In her cell at the Conciergerie, a damp stone gut known as the antechamber of death, a woman tried to compose herself. She had almost no blood left. Hemorrhages had tormented her for months, and even less hope. She asked the guard for a mirror. He refused. She had to comb her gray, close-cropped hair by feel. She wore a white widow's dress, the only thing she was allowed to keep. When she put on her shoes, the black slippers seemed absurdly elegant against the dirt of the floor. Jacques-Louis David, the artist of the Revolution and a dispassionate observer, sat by his window on Rue Saint-Honoré that day. He sketched her portrait as the cart carried her to the scaffold. This drawing doesn't show the marshmallow beauty from Vigée-Lebrun's portraits. It shows an old woman with a sunken mouth and a proud, almost arrogant, upturned chin. She was only 37 years old. The story of Marie Antoinette is no princess's fairy tale. It is the chronicle of how a living person was slowly ground down by millstones, lubricated with gold and then with blood.
Imagine an island in the middle of the Rhine, a neutral zone between France and Austria. May 1770. The 14-year-old Archduchess Maria Antonia Josepha Johanna was led into a wooden pavilion. According to protocol, to become the Dauphine of France, she had to leave everything Austrian at the threshold. Everything that meant everything. They stripped her naked. Her stockings, her chemise were removed. Even her beloved pug was taken away. The girl stood trembling, naked, before strangers who appraisingly scrutinized her like a mare at a fair. She was given French lingerie, a French dress, and a French name. She emerged from the pavilion as Marie Antoinette. This ritual, intended to symbolize the purity of transition, in reality became a prophecy. From the very beginning, France only wanted to possess her shell, completely uninterested in what lay within. Versailles greeted her not with embraces, but with icy, suffocating etiquette. It was not a palace, but a giant terrarium, where every step, every breath, and every excretion of the monarch was a public act. The Queen's morning toilette turned into an absurd spectacle. She stood naked and shivering, waiting for her chemise to be handed to her, but only a lady of the highest rank could hand it over. And so, the chemise was held by the lady's maid, passed to the Duchess, who was ready to place it on the Queen. But then, a princess of the blood entered the room. The Duchess was obliged to pass the chemise to the princess. The princess then removed her gloves. Marie Antoinette stood, clasping herself with her arms, her teeth chattering from the cold. This was no anecdote, it was her daily torture. But the main catastrophe was unfolding in the bedroom. 7 years. 7 long years the marriage was not consummated. All of Europe snickered into its fist, and panic-stricken dispatches flew through diplomatic channels. Why is there no heir? Her mother, Empress Maria Theresa, wrote letters to her daughter full of venomous sarcasm, demanding that she wake up her husband.
Her husband, Louis XVI, was not a bad man, but tragically unsuited for the throne. He loved locksmithing, hunting, and eating heartily. Women frightened him. Furthermore, he had a physiological problem, phimosis, which made the act of love painful. He feared the scalpel more than the wrath of Austria. Marie Antoinette found herself trapped. Her only job was to bear a son. She was failing. Versailles whispered. To drown out this ringing silence in the bedroom and her own sense of inadequacy, she began to spend. She wasn't buying things, she was buying emotions. Diamonds, piles of feathers and hairstyles as tall as a ship's mast, gambling tables where fortunes were lost overnight. She built herself the Petit Trianon, a toy village where she could milk perfumed cows in aprons of the finest silk and play at simple life. It was offensive. Real peasants dying of hunger 10 leagues from Versailles did not appreciate the irony. Speaking of hunger, she never said the phrase, "If they have no bread, let them eat cake." This cliché had been circulating in France even before her birth, attributed to various princesses. But the people believed it. The people needed an enemy, and the Austrian woman fit perfectly. She was hated not for what she did, but for who she was, an outsider. The turning point came in 1785, the affair of the diamond necklace. It was a plot worthy of a picaresque novel, which became the monarchy's tombstone. An adventuress, Jeanne de Valois Saint-Remy, convinced the Cardinal of Rohan that the Queen craved to buy an fabulously expensive diamond necklace, but secretly. The Cardinal, that pompous fool who dreamed of the Queen's favor, believed her. A nocturnal meeting was arranged in a grove in Versailles, where a hired milliner played the role of the Queen. In the dark, all cats are gray, and all queens are majestic. The Cardinal received the necklace, handed it over to the swindlers, who dismantled it with knives and sold the stones in London.
When the deception came to light, Marie Antoinette was judged not in a courtroom, but in Parisian pamphlets. No one believed in her innocence. "The Queen sells herself for diamonds!" The Queen meets cardinals in the bushes. Filth poured in torrents. Pornographic caricatures, depicting her in orgies with servants, brothers-in-law, and even her son, were sold on every corner. The monarchy was not dying on the barricades. It was dying in those dirty leaflets. The sacred aura of power was trampled in printer's ink. And then 1789 struck, when a crowd of women, fishwives, butchers, and simply desperate people came to Versailles for bread, and the Queen's entrails, Marie Antoinette, for the first time, showed what was hidden beneath the powder and silk, the steel backbone of the Habsburgs. She stepped out onto the balcony, alone. Below, a sea of pikes, muskets, and faces distorted by rage raged. Someone raised a rifle. She bowed her head, as if inviting a shot. And the crowd was taken aback. The rifle was lowered. Uncertain cries rang out, "Long live the Queen!" It was a moment of truth, but it lasted only seconds. The family was taken to Paris, to the Tuileries. A golden cage was replaced by a real prison, albeit one with velvet curtains. Their escape attempt, the famous Flight to Varennes in the summer of 1791, is a textbook on how not to make revolutions and how not to flee from them. Instead of quick, light carriages, they ordered a huge, heavy berline stuffed with silver, wine, and a wardrobe. They travelled slowly, as if on a picnic. Louis kept poking his head out of the window. At one of the post stations, the postmaster Drouet, seeing a profile in the window, took out a 50-livre assignat. He compared the portrait. There was no doubt. The king was not caught by soldiers. He was caught by his own bureaucracy and love of comfort. The journey back to Paris was hell, dust, heat, spittle on the carriage windows, death threats. Marie Antoinette's hair, according to legend, but confirmed by witnesses, turned white overnight. The end came swiftly. The storming of the Tuileries, imprisonment in the Temple Tower, the execution of her husband. Louis ascended the scaffold in January 1793. He tried to deliver a speech, but General Santerre waved his hand, and the roar of drums drowned out the monarch's last words. Marie Antoinette was transferred to the Conciergerie in August. Her children were taken from her. The farewell scene with her 7-year-old son, Louis Charles, lasted for hours. The mother clung to her child, screamed, fought with the guards. In the end, the boy was forcibly torn away. What the revolutionaries did to that child afterward would have made even the most cynical executioners shudder. He was plied with alcohol, taught to swear, and forced to sign a deposition accusing his mother of incest. At the trial, this document became the prosecution's main trump card. Prosecutor Fouquier Tinville, a man with dead fish eyes, threw this accusation in her face. He expected her to break. But Marie Antoinette stood up. Silence fell in the stuffy courtroom, packed with sweaty bodies. "I appeal to all mothers present here," her voice, cracked yet clear, lashed through the hall. "Is such a crime even possible?" And the market women, the knitters, those very furies of the guillotine, who had come to witness her humiliation, suddenly began to stir in her support. The accusation had gone too far. Nature cannot be judged by political slogans. But the verdict had been written even before the trial began. Guilty. Death. October 16th. Noon. She refused confession from a priest who had sworn allegiance to the revolution. "God sees everything anyway," she said. She was placed in the cart of shame, a simple cart for dung and logs, not even the closed carriage in which her husband had been taken. Her hands were tied behind her back, the ropes bit into her swollen wrists. She sat on the hard plank, trying to keep her back straight, despite every jolt of the wheels echoing with pain in her ailing body. The crowd roared, "Death to the Austrian woman!" She looked over their heads. Neither fear nor tears. Only an endless weariness and contempt frozen into a mask on her face. She seemed no longer to be in Paris. She was somewhere very far away. As she ascended the scaffold, she stumbled and stepped on the foot of the executioner Sanson. "Pardon me, monsieur," she whispered reflexively. "I did not do it on purpose." These were her last words. Politeness, ingrained in her very being, outlived the monarchy, wealth, and life itself. She was tied to the plank. The mechanism worked with its characteristic greasy click. The blade, weighing 40 kilograms, fell. Her head was shown to the crowd. Someone shouted, "Long live the Republic!" But many were silent. Too mundane, too technical was the fall of the curtain on an era that had lasted for centuries. The body was thrown into a common grave in the Madeleine Cemetery and covered with unslaked lime. The ledgers recorded, "Coffin for Widow Capet 7 livres." The price of the Queen of France's life was equal to the cost of a good pair of gloves.